This week starts a new series called How to Not Ruin Your Life. If that doesn't inspire you, I don't know what will. This is a series based on the book of Proverbs. Now, what I wanted to do is do a quick review on what the book of Proverbs, what that even means when I say that. Well, we have this book called the Bible. There's probably a few in your pews right now. There are 66 books of the Bible, and there's all different classifications of different types of books. There's books of stories, books of laws, letters, books of poetry. And then there's this book, Proverbs. And what this is a book written by or attributed to King Solomon. And we're going to talk about who that is in a little bit. But it's a book, it's called a book of wisdom. There's a few books in the Bible that we call these books of wisdom. I looked up for a really good definition because when I think of proverb, I think of actual proverbs come to mind. I was trying to think of a good definition. I just fell in love with this one that I found. What is a proverb? It's a short, pithy saying in general use, stating a general truth or a piece of advice. A short, pithy saying that's stating a general truth or a piece of advice. I like that class of the short, pithy saying. This can't be a paragraph. This should be able to fit on a bumper sticker. I always think it's like what's on your fortune cookie. If it can't fit on that little slip of paper, it's probably too long. It's got to be pithy. And so we're going to talk through some wonderful proverbs from the Bible. Most of these did not come off fortune cookies, but they're written by King Solomon. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about King Solomon so you understand why he's telling us things. Like, who's this guy? What's he got going for him? King Solomon is the son of King David. David had lots of children, but Solomon is the one that ends up being king. Even though he's not the sort of the rightful, he wasn't first in line. There's a story there, but we're not going to cover it today. But in Solomon's youth, he has this dream. And in this dream, God comes to him and says, Solomon, what do you want? I'll give you whatever you ask for. And Solomon asks for wisdom. Now, he's a younger man, and this is prior to him being king. And God is so impressed that Solomon would ask for wisdom. He says, I will grant you this. I will give you wisdom because you did not ask for a self-serving reward. Now, I struggle with this because I think the right answer here is you always wish for more wishes. That's the real wisdom. But God says no, it's about a self-sacrificing or a non-self-serving reward. So he gives Solomon wisdom. And you may be familiar with Solomon without even knowing you're familiar with Solomon, because there's that famous story of the two women that are both claiming a baby. One of them they both had children, but one of them had lost the baby, and in her grief was laying claim to another woman's child. And they came to Solomon to settle the dispute, and Solomon said, well, we're just going to have to cut the baby in half. Which again, at face value, does not look like good advice. And of course, the actual mother says, no, no, no. I would rather see my child live a life with a stranger than to be killed. And Solomon said, that one's the mom. And gives that woman, there was no baby cut. That didn't actually happen. It was all a ploy. I'm sorry, if this is the first time you're hearing that story, I want to make sure you know, the baby survived. Everything was fine. So this is Solomon. This is who he is in his early life and his early reign as king. He's known as the wisest man on earth, the wisest person in the Bible, except for maybe Jesus. Except for Jesus, not maybe Jesus. Except for Jesus. Solomon was a wise guy. So we're going to be picking apart some of the things that he put in his book of Proverbs. Some of these are wonderful Proverbs. If you've never read through Proverbs, there's 31 chapters, and you don't have to pick up and follow it along because it's just advice. So there's little snippets. Each chapter kind of has a theme. But you can, if you're like, man, I could use a little wisdom in my life, crack open Proverbs and just jump in. But we're going to be selecting a few of them during this series. And the first one I wanted to talk about is this proverb here. It's in the 13th chapter. It's verse 10. Again, you can follow along, but probably by the time you get there, because this is a pithy, short piece of advice, I'll probably be done reading it before you get there. Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. So today's advice from Solomon, I'm summing up to be, have an awesome crew. Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. In reflection of this, a story came to mind. It's not a story about me. I don't have any mistakes in my past to talk about, so I had to go outside of my own experience. But a friend of mine, a colleague, had told me a story about going to college. And I'm going to try to make sure not all of the examples from this series comes from college. We make mistakes in other times in our life as well, but lots of them seem to happen then too. But he said when he first got to college, he was sharing a dorm room, as we do, with a roommate. And it was not someone he knew, he just was assigned. And they both were in a freshman level English class that met across campus at 8 a.m. What that meant was, my friend, who was not a morning person, was expected to be out of bed, properly clothed, and in a classroom a mile's walk from his dorm room by 8 a.m. The professor said, if you're not there at 8:03, he gave a little grace, he was a wise man as well, I'm locking the doors, and that's it. And so my friend set his alarm for 7 o'clock, thinking, well, if I just wear the clothes I'm wearing now and roll out of bed, and I walk directly there, I roll out of bed into my shoes and directly walk there, I will have enough time to make it and maybe go to the bathroom somewhere along the way. And so the first morning, the alarm went off. And the roommate, who was also in this class, without opening his eyes, said, if you don't go, I won't go. And the friend thought, well, he makes an interesting point. Said if we're both gone, then there won't be any judgment in this dorm room. We can traverse this decision together. And he said that morning they did not go to class. And this class met twice a week. And the next time that alarm went off, they had a very similar conversation. If I don't go, are you going to go? Well, I'm not going to go if you're not going to go. Okay. The following week, they had even shorter of a conversation. You going? Nope. And by the end of the semester, they had found they had been to this class a lot less times than the professor had. My friend said this was not the only class that this attitude affected, but this was the most dramatic. He said, when I finished my first year of college with a 1.9 GPA, I had a new understanding. For a companion of fools suffers harm. Now, my friend is an adult and had the ability to make his own decisions. But there's this power of being part of a group, of having somebody alongside us. We are heavily influenced by the people around us. Even those of us who think we are not, we are heavily influenced by the group that we choose to call our peers. I say it that way because we do make a choice. We make a choice to who influences our life in this way. For better or for worse, the people around us help guide where we're going. I mean, quite literally, if you think of everyone walking somewhere, if all of your friends, and you're walking with them, say, oh no, we're going to go this way to that place, what's the likelihood you're going to say, oh, I'll meet you there because I think this way is better? We walk with the people that we choose to walk with. I think of a time in the Bible, and we're going to talk about the Bible sometimes during this series. Examples from the Bible, at least. The disciples, the poor disciples. The disciples were not a bright group of young men. They were not particularly skilled in much of anything. Some of them were skilled in some things, like we have some fishermen, and we have a tax collector, and then we have a religious zealot, and it's just kind of a hodgepodge of people. But there was a time that this group of random people who were following Jesus found themselves in a boat. Jesus had been praying, and he said, go ahead. Don't worry about me. And so then, okay. They went off on the boat. And in the middle of the night, Jesus, as Jesus sometimes does, walks on the water out to meet them. Immediately, they are frightened and scared, and they think he's a ghost. They call out to him and said, who's there? Are you a ghost? Which is a question I've always wanted to ask a ghost. I just think it's a great question. Are you a ghost? No? Okay. But Jesus says, I am not a ghost. It is I. It's Jesus, your master. And Peter calls out to Jesus. He says, if you are truly Jesus, call me out of this boat so I may walk on water as well. Now, to understand why Peter does this, you have to understand that the idea here is that a disciple and a rabbi, the relationship here is that you were to follow in the footsteps of your rabbi, almost literally. You would follow right behind them. You would go where they go. You do what they do. You would find yourself as a companion to this person. So what Peter wanted was to walk where Jesus was walking. He wanted to make himself a companion to Jesus. And Jesus calls him out of the boat. Now Peter, who's not at all ready for this, gets out of the boat, takes a few steps, kind of panics and starts to sink, and Jesus saves him, pulls him back into the boat. But we have this idea that even Peter, who's a fisherman, he's not a biblical scholar, he's not a Torah scholar at that time, he's just a guy. He understands that his job is to walk where his rabbi walks, to walk where Jesus leads. So he steps out of a boat in the middle of a lake during a storm at night, which is just like the most terrifying thing I can imagine. For better or for worse, the people around us influence where we end up. You think Peter just woke up that morning and said, I think I'm going to try walking on water today. I've been on a boat most of my life. I've always thought that might be a cool thing to do. I'm just going to go for it today. If it weren't for Jesus, if it weren't for that situation, if it weren't for his peer group and the situation they found themselves in, that would never have happened. So I could end the sermon right here. I could say, find a good crew, an awesome crew. Not a good crew, an awesome crew. Find an awesome crew. Find people around you that challenge you to be better. And that's solid advice. That's an important thing to learn. The people around you, literally here, the people around you here, they have the same trajectory. They're hopefully walking the same way you are. You guys can travel together. That's okay. The wise walk with the wise. Or the not so wise walk with the wise and become wise. That's a good thing too. But that's not the only thing that Solomon has to say on the subject. He has another pithy piece here that you might have heard. This is one that I like to use quite often. As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. Have you heard this before? Iron sharpening iron? It's one of my favorites. It's this idea that we make each other better. We challenge each other. We call each other out when we need to be called out. And so this idea that we should surround ourselves with the people that make us better is only half of what we're supposed to be doing. The other half is you have to be an awesome crew member. You have to be someone else's iron. It's not enough to say, who's going to make me better? Make me better. We also live our life making other people better, challenging people, inviting people to walk the path that we are walking. If you're wondering if this sermon was going to come back to evangelism, here we go. We invite the people that were around us to follow us on our path too. We've got some wise people here. Our job is to invite other people to walk that path. Because the first one that we were talking about, the wise walk with the wise. And in some ways, you are wise. In other ways, we need to find wise people to walk with. It's this give and take. If you need more clarification upon that, we can explore it later. Sometimes we are the influencer. Sometimes it's our roommate who's saying, I won't go if you won't go. And it's on us to say, no, let's go. I'll buy you a coffee on the way. Inspire those around you or those who are following you. Be the iron sharpening iron. Be the wise walking with the wise. That's what Solomon is calling us to do here. And just to tie it up in a nice little bow, that second semester, my friend got a new roommate. Said, I need to be out of this environment. This isn't working for me. And got into a new situation, a new room. Also didn't sign up for any 8 a.m. classes. Ended up graduating, making the dean's list the next 3.5 years. Went on to get a master's level degree. Went on to get their doctorate. And is now a seminary professor. And when he talks about this story, he mentions this pithy, short piece of advice, that the wise walks with the wise, and a companion of fools suffers harm. He said, I could not have done this alone. If I had not found a group of people that would challenge me, and then a group of people that I could return to and challenge in turn, if I did not find myself in a position to be called out of a boat by Jesus Christ, I probably would have been a first-year college dropout. But now, he's wise enough to be teaching me from all of his mistakes. The wise walk with the wise. Iron sharpens iron. We are called to be part of something bigger than ourselves. Let us pray.